Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Happiness Index podcast. My name is, I was about to say my name is Madalena, but my name is Matt. Matt Phelan. I'm co founder of the Happiness Index and the host of this podcast. And I'm here with Madalena Carey, who's going to introduce herself. Hello, Madalena.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me. I am the Madalena, right? Um, so I am the founder of Happiness Business School, and I've been working, with happiness in the workplace for the past 7 years, I would say. Yeah, I just love building more human workplaces, and I guess we'll be talking about it.
Absolutely. So, Madalena and I have never met before, but we think that we've been connected by the algorithms that say, oh, these two people are looking at happiness. We
Yeah.
obviously look at the data side. I think with up to about 4 million employees, about 50 million data points that we've measured. Um, and then I came across your profile, Madalena, and I was like, this is so interesting. We have to get you on and we have to go through everything. But before I ask you a few questions, could you just do a little bit about your career and how you got to where you are now? I think I've had a look through your LinkedIn, but it's fascinating. Just give us a little walk through your history, please.
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to make it brief. Hopefully, I won't make it too long. So, why did I found Happiness Business School? I would say, all the whys, and I've connected. It all made sense after a few things. So, it's not just one thing. So, just going back to my young age. So, I was a very complicated child. I was diagnosed with depression from a really young age. I visited all psychologists. I'm just giving you the background so you understand, where uh, where I'm at in my journey and why it makes sense where I am today. So I visited all psychologists, psychiatrists, all types of alternative medicine therapies. My mom was very connected to that. And nothing would really help me or be that truly transformative. I come from, a privileged background. Nothing really lacked in my family, very structured. And at some point, I decided to study law. Study law because I was good at communicating. I guess I was good at defending arguments, and I had that very passion of just fighting for causes. And I felt that I could make a difference. Of course, that came with a lot of family expectations. I have a family of lawyers and so forth. But I remember that when I finished the course and my degree, I felt this huge sense of abyss. I was so lost. I started working from a really young age. I was doing transcribing, I was transcribing court cases, and I was translating a lot of documentation. And I had some pocket money. And I remember when I finished my degree, I was feeling so lost and disconnected, with the outside world, but I guess within myself, that I looked in the map and I said, where is the furthest point on the globe that I can just go? And my finger just really landed in Sydney in the map. I don't know why.
Wow.
Maybe I do know because now I brought a husband and two kids, so maybe I know why. But I remember landing there, and the first thing that I felt was this huge sense of freedom, you know. And I understood then the power of social conditioning. And I remember feeling this, my life will be the result of every single decision that I make and that I take without, the outside noise that is a lot of times our bubble and our little society that surrounds us. And I thought to myself, for the first time, I'm going to do something for myself and pay, with my own money. And I decided to study to understand what was happening inside my neural machinery that wouldn't allow me to feel good. And it's when I start tapping into all sorts of, studies that you could possibly imagine, like coaching and neuro-linguistic programming and mental health and so forth. And what truly made sense to me was positive psychology, right? It was really understanding, the foundations of the science of happiness and understanding that our brain has really this malleable nature, and we can actually, it's like a software we can reprogram with training and over time, and that's self-directed neuroplasticity. And over time, I started, trying to integrate some practices. At the same time, in parallel, I was working in different organizations. As I had a law degree, I started working in compliance in different education service providers and big groups. And I experienced all types of cultures. So really positive cultures, but I wouldn't feel, this sense of purpose, or very toxic cultures. I worked in a very toxic company, and I was an immigrant at a time, and they leveraged that. So that was terrifying. I started, with all this high stress. I just really started putting on weight. So I had this feeling of what's, working in a really good culture, and what's working in a very toxic culture. One day, but I started over time just making decisions. Then I worked for a great company. And in 2016, for personal reasons, I need to come back to Portugal. And people were like, "Oh, she's different. She's more whole. What happened to her?" Life was going really well for me. And I think it's because, I started practicing and integrating a lot of practices in my life, and just really optimizing my life. And at that time, in a very informal way, I started, having these requests from people to help them optimize their lives. And it's when I start delivering and accompanying people into helping them, reaching their own goals. And it's funny because during that time, it's when I understand that 90% or over 90% of my clients, the reasons and the causes for their anxiety and exhaustion and burnout, and, a lot of times feelings of depression, that I would then, ask them to just go see a professional, was related to labor issues, right? So they would have a toxic culture, or they would have a toxic boss, or a lot of times they would love what they did, but they hated the way that they did it. So, a lot of times they would be passionate about their jobs, but they would just hate that they had to work like 16 hours a day, and that would erode that passion. Or a lot of times it was just like, me for so long, which is we have everything that looks like externally perfect, right? But a lot of times they wouldn't know how to value. So what I understood, it was very clear, is that, most people are awake. Uh, you know, um, m- Half of the time we are awake, we are in the workplace and we're feeling miserable. So I thought it was a great idea to just, bring happiness to the workplace, so we could bring happiness into the everyday life. So that's how the concept has arrived. Sorry, I don't think I could keep it short.
No, Madeline, that there's 4 questions that are going in my head that are follow-up questions to
Yeah.
that I really want to get into, and then we will get to the actual questions that we put together. So, what I find really interesting about that story is you took the feeling of how you were feeling, as you say, how your mother perceived you in childhood, right up to where you talked about feeling disconnected. You found positive psychology. Now, one of the criticisms I often read about positive psychology is it can sort of like lurch a little bit into toxic positivity, where you pretend everything's all right, okay. But what's interesting about your story is it's a really good story of actually analyzing what was making you unhappy and how you felt. And then you found things through your own research that helped you. So you
Yeah.
actually went out and research. So I just wanted to touch on that
Yeah.
that point on where you see positive psychology and
Yeah.
whether that differs to your experience, or and the dangers of it lurching into sort of
Yeah.
toxic activity.
Yeah.
So I'll just lay that out to you and let you respond to that.
Yeah. No, I love that. I like to think that I'm my own business case, and I remember even my mother just saying, she would say that I would have just two different auras, like a really, dark one, and a one that it felt like it was pink, and she could see much more the pink aura, as I started evolving and doing this work. When I was young, I hated when people said, just be happy, just be happy. That is toxic positivity. That's really not understanding, that the more you neglect the causes, the more it feels, fake, right? Positive psychology doesn't work like, fake it till you make it. Is really just understanding that, optimism is not living in la la land. Optimism is just really cultivating a way of being that every situation, even if it's harder, has a bright side to it. And if it doesn't have a bright side to it, at least has a learning lesson, right?
Yeah.
So when we start to just, let go of that toxic positivity, and I think that happens, toxic optimism and positivity, it happens because a lot of times I think people associate happiness with an emotion. That's a great philosophical, discussion I think we could have. I don't see happiness as an emotion. I see joy as an emotion, and I see happiness as a construct, of experiences, of, feelings, of practices, of how our genes play with all of these, of our life circumstances, but also the intentional activities that we play. So I think happiness is very much a choice, in a sense that, there's studies and positive psychology has, extensive research, but even if you practice gratitude or resilience or self-compassion, you're actually just really interacting with your brain in a way that you're really, self-directing your training to just really evolve, develop some mechanisms, so then you can just build, a nice positive cycle, and have more positive responses to when you face adversity, right? So there's very much relation into, cultivating gratitude to the feeling of, feeling better, of doing well for others, acts of kindness for others, that really feeds off you feeling better. When you think positive, you're actually, thickening this area of the brain, the prefrontal frontal cortex, which is the area associated to creating new memories. So if you know how to navigate that software, and if you know how to thicken the right areas of the brain, then it becomes a way of being that is more automatic. Like, yeah, I wouldn't say it's a vicious cycle, it is a virtuous one.
I love that. And Madalena, just a couple of things I've captured there, which I'm going to bring back in the summary. So don't neglect the causes, and optimism is not living in la la land. I think that's a really powerful
Yeah.
point. And I have that on my screensaver on my phone. It's Michael Jordan that says, "Turn every negative situation into a positive." It's just how everything that happens, even when it's the worst thing, and that's just a question I ask myself. And you know what? Sometimes you can't, but it is a good
Yeah.
question to ask.
And the
Uh,
negative thoughts, I had to understand that as well. I like to, before we talk about happiness, it is crucial that we talk about unhappiness. So I really wanted to uncover what are the modern causes of, unhappiness. And I know that you know this, but truth is our brain was not primarily made to, just be happy or to just be content. If we go back to the prehistoric times, our brain are where we lived, in the savannah with a tiger or a hungry lion. Our brains are literally programmed to be in this constant state of alertness to the risk factors, right? The
yeah.
truth is, we have a civilization built around us. We have much more information now, that would allow us to make more informed decisions. So we can go from that more primal state of the brain that just pays attention to what's negative, because that is a survival mechanism, and just really shift it, to a more flourishing one. And I think positive psychology really brings that journey for it.
I think that's why there's so many of us. Like when I get my 360 feedback at work, I just go straight towards the negatives.
Yeah.
Anything that's positive, I'm like, ignore that, ignore that. But
Yeah.
that's why that lesson is so powerful. That's our body, that's our
Yeah.
chemistry. Madalena, one interesting thing I just want to pick up on that you've said, I'd have to go back and check how many times you said this, but I think you said it 3 times. You've talked about optimizing their lives.
Yeah.
That's a very specific thing that you're saying there. Why do you use, because when I think of optimize, everything you said at the beginning is like about human, sounds very human, but optimize sounds very computery based. You use the word software at least once. Is there a reason why you're using the word optimizing? I'm just interested in that specific.
That is very interesting because I never thought about it. But as you are talking, and I think there's an analogy that I can make with the work that we do with organizations, is that for me, when I talk about optimizing, it is not necessarily about doing more. It is a lot of times just taking away what doesn't serve us, taking away the roadblocks, taking away obsolete processes, taking away practices that don't serve us anymore, and just really getting to the way of agility and performance and feel good. So I think we started living in this way, like individually and, and personally, but also professionally. Like we have too many balls, to just, keep in the air. And a lot of times that is not necessary. So for me, optimizing equals to simplifying. If
Okay,
that makes sense.
loving this. I've got that. That's my third takeaway. Takeaway that what doesn't serve us. I got so many questions. You said about your mum when she said about the different auras, and there was like a pink aura and a dark aura. Are you now comfortable with both auras? As in, you know what you were saying about how it's important that we don't just push away negatives. The way that you see that now, do you think like because Carl Jung is the whole proponent of we have all sides of a personality and we hide away socially unacceptable ones that we are taught that should disappear. How do you see that now? Is it one aura? Is it a merged aura? How do you see that visually in your head, Madalena?
I would say that I am more, constant. Um, my regulation is more constant, but what I've learned is to accept fully, all the versions of myself, the shadows as well, but also the negative emotions, because I think that what kept me so frustrated for so long is that I was trying to reject everything that was bad and everything that didn't make me feel good, and wherever whatever you put energy into flourishes, positive or negative. And then I understood, and I just, this is, emotion management and self knowledge and self awareness, just really understanding what each emotion is really trying to teach me. So rather than just trying to reject what I'm feeling right now, even if I'm having a hard day or if I'm having that dark aura, just with understanding, like if I'm feeling anger, what is it? For me, for example, what I've come to understand is that when I am feeling anger is because I am not respecting my boundaries, or I'm not respecting my limits. So just really understanding how our emotions just really, project themselves in our bodies physically, also learn to accept and to let go, but also understanding what are they teaching us, and again, it goes back to the, realistic optimism, which is, okay, I don't like what I'm feeling, but I am learning with what I'm feeling. And then just keep telling to myself, and it goes back to what we were saying, like, um, you know, it is negative, but you are loved and you are safe. And I just keep, repeating this to myself. And I say this to my kids, when they're having these tantrums and just going, on this red mode, and, their amygdala is absolutely, you are loved and you are safe. There's no need to just go back to it. So yeah, that's a good mantra to have.
That's funny because the next question I was going to have was a parenting question, which
Yeah.
is if you had to rate yourself out, you said that your words were accept fully all my emotions. If you had to rate yourself out of 10 at how good you are at that, how would you rate yourself out of 10 at accepting your emotions? Just 10 being like I do it all the time to 1 being I push them all out of the way. Where would you
Yeah.
rate
I would say I'm in an 8.
an 8?
Yeah.
Now this
Still
question,
yeah.
the follow-up question is actually more parenting advice for myself. How good are you at then doing that when you're a parent? Like when you're
It decreases. It decreases.
where would you put yourself?
Um, it depends on the days. Um, some days I'm a 10, some days I'm a 6, and I gotta forgive myself for that as well, Kids are our best mirror, for the good and for the bad. And they are, I think, like the biggest development, self-development course. I would say overall 6, 7. 7.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I brought that
I'm
out.
very yeah, sorry.
No, no, I just said I brought that out to help out all other parents feel a
Yeah.
bit better about that because I'm really hard on myself about that. Like I try and understand this
Me
stuff.
too.
And when my kids are upset, it really hurts me and I instantly want to improve it. So yeah, that's very personal. So I really appreciate you sharing
Yeah.
that. You
And also, and my family, we're very much Latin. So I grew up in a family that's very intense. We would yell a lot, not in an abusive way, but just like, yelling and I understood that I had that pattern. So it's something that I have worked over the years. My son is 8. My youngest daughter, she's 4, and I've been very conscious, in working, in working towards that. Sometimes we're not there, but I am very, if I was very demanding with myself and very, at the moment, I am very compassionate, and if I am wrong with them someday, I will just forgive myself. I will apologize and I will just try to do better. But just really understanding that we can't ask of them what we don't do ourselves. So that's a big one.
Wow, that is a big one. I like that. I got a lot of takeaways here. I didn't think we were going to talk about Cristiano Ronaldo today, but we are going to.
Are we? Okay.
On the labour issues part, I found that super interesting what you were saying because I remember going to Manchester United, inside Manchester United, when Ronaldo was there the second time. And I remember being able to feel this, what I would describe as a toxic culture. I could actually feel it just from being in the building and around the people. And about a week later, Cristiano Ronaldo did an interview with Piers Morgan, and it was
Yes.
very. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
It was very controversial at the time. Some people loved it, some people hated it. But the thing that I remember him saying is, if you take a fish out of poisonous water, the fish will get better. And if you take a healthy fish and put it in the poisonous water, the fish will be unhealthy. Um, and that's why I brought that story up, because there is the labour issues point that you're coming up with. I don't know if you have the answer to this because it's a very complicated question, but if someone is listening and they feel that they are working somewhere that is toxic and is impacting their health, but I also want to caveat it, Madalena, that it might not be so simple for this person to just leave, because there may be issues to do with they need the money. They could be a single parent, and I'm always the proponent of, and if you can just leave, like get out, like blah 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 blah. But life's not always like that. If you had one bit of advice for someone that was in a toxic environment and you knew it was impacting their health, but they financially couldn't leave at this time, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah. I do. I'm reflecting as I go. Um, I'm going to tell you the story. We have a certification here for days. Different people from different companies come, and we talk about organizational happiness. They build their action plans and so forth. And I had one person exactly in that situation. For personal reasons, she couldn't quit. Quietly cracking, absolutely, at her end. And after 4 days, just really deconstructing and demystifying everything, she came here on the last day and she said, I found the purpose for this stage of my life, which is to be the light in my workplace. And I found that amazing. Of course, it's not always easy, but she reframed the meaning, and the purpose for that stage of her life, to just be able to, to just have um, to just really fill in, her emotional tank, to just get inspired to get out of bed every single day. It's the same situation as, when JF Kennedy gets to NASA, he asks the person that is cleaning the toilets, what do you do? And she's like, I help the men going to the moon. So if we can't change the situation, a lot of times we can change the lenses through we see the situation. And that is a boost of, intrinsic motivation and inspiration. It is not always easy. You will need a lot of resilience, perseverance, and also detach, that the life that I'm living, it's not me. And also, I think there's an interesting book that it's very old. It's called The Conquest of Happiness from Bertrand Russell. And he brings the modern causes of unhappiness. He says the first one, I think that's in that book. The number one cause of modern unhappiness is lack of meaning. So I think a lot of times we have the ability to just reframe the meaning into every single situation and just find a way to contribute. I think in every single task that we're doing, every single difficult situation that we are, if we go back to the mindset of service and contribution, I think we'll just try and we'll be able to just really, rescue ourselves to sanity. Not easy, but doable.
That's really helpful, Madalena. So we're on to question number one. And what makes you happy?
Straight to that question, so it's so simple, and a lot of times we don't even think about it. I really think what makes me happy is profound connections and profound relationships. So that feeling of closeness with the people that I love the most, family and friends, and even when I meet a stranger and I feel so close to that person, because for so long I felt that I didn't belong in this world and I would meet people that wouldn't speak my language. So I think that's something that really bring me happiness. And then it came with positive psychology, just really appreciating the small wonders of life, right? A walk in nature, the sun getting through the window, on a morning, um, just really pausing and recentering myself over a cup of coffee. And then a big one for me is building, whether it is building a business, building a new system, building a new project, building a new version of myself, just that, exciting feeling of, could I shift this? Could I reframe that? Could I do something different in this category that the world doesn't have yet? So I love starting things from scratch. Yeah, I love that. But of course, I think like if I combine all these, I think what makes me truly happy is living a life of meaning where I feel that I'm contributing positively to the world, and that feeling of that sense of fulfillment is really what brought me this sense of peace that are very anchoring in hard days. So for me, feeling at peace equals to, long lasting happiness.
Love that. Love that. Happiness building as well featured in there, which I thought was
Yeah.
um I'm gonna give some context behind why I've got this question in here. So when I tell people that I'm a co-founder of the Happiness Index,
Yeah.
there's two sort of responses. There's that, oh my God, that's the most amazing thing ever. I think it's brilliant. But then there's all this of people who think, oh my God, what the hell is that? Is that a load of rubbish? Is that just made up? Like, what is that? That is not that's not a proper job.
Yeah.
So when I saw your job title, obviously I'm super intrigued. I'm in that, like, what is this? Um, so what is a happiness business school, Madalena? What is it?
Yeah, I have gone through the same, young a woman talking about happiness in the workplace in a very traditional male conservative dominant, especially this market in Portugal at the time. I like to think that we are an unconventional business school. We are a movement towards reimagining work itself. So I look at a traditional and typical business school, and they help, companies just better manage projects, systems, strategy, get more efficiency. I like to think that we aim at humanizing those. So just really helping companies creating, more human workplaces, more human processes, more human policies, and just really making sure that, at the core of every single thing we do, we have a human-centered strategy that we roll out with true human sustainability. In the end of the day, companies really, people don't just get jobs; they get, careers with purpose. I think that's what we do. How do we do? We have an offer to the public, and then we have this corporate offer. So we have a certification in organizational happiness, an MBA in organizational happiness for everyone who wants to really dive deep into this journey. And then we help companies, through keynotes, workshops, leadership programs, and transformation programs. So that involves consultancy. I think the main distinguishing factor is that we bring some objectivity to this um, perceived as subjective topic. And we help leaders just really, implement, create, and integrate an action plan. We call it an organizational happiness plan, and they will just really make a cultural audit. They will understand from onboarding to offboarding what's happening, what are the main, positive points, what are the main struggles, what are the main objectives that we will, propose ourselves to, bringing, some seriousness and credibility to that. So we will define performance indicators, we will roll out a strategy, and then just monitor that. So we will always apply theory and the science of happiness, the science of positive psychology, applied to leadership, and an action plan ready to implement in companies. And I think that has been, a good way where we were able to just get some credible business cases, and it works.
That's a good summary. I feel like we covered this in the extended intro, but why did you found the Happiness Business School in summary?
It was that. So I felt that everyone was miserable in the workplace from, people I was meeting. I felt that HR departments were very much focused on admin rather than on people and culture. And I just wanted to just really help people be happier in their lives. And since we, half of our time awake is in the workplace, I thought it made sense to just really, help leaders humanize the workplace because, burnout, disengagement, unmotivation, quiet quitting, quiet cracking are just, they're becoming all too common. And I just really wanted to help. And it resonated with my journey, I think that some way we can reframe and just find our purpose in life is just find what is the thing we struggle most with, get well equipped to deal with that within yourself, on your internal state and exterior state, and then teach others. And it's how I have reframed my life, I would say.
That's so powerful, Madalena. I just want to read something out that from last week to frame the next question. So I went to the My HR Careers event in London last week, and there was the, I'm just reading to get his job title correct, the director of people at UNICEF. I mean, couldn't be probably a better place to work if you were like looking for a dream job. And he came out with a statement that in 5 years, HR directors could be performance directors working alongside AI. And the reason I'm putting that context in there is because I wrote this question to you before I went to that event. So the question is, does happiness lead to performance?
Yeah, but then you have different types of performance. We would have to see what he means by performance, right? It can be very much technical or behavioral as well. So
Yeah.
um you are the stats guy, so I would say this. I think that happiness truly leads to performance. That I remember when I started Happiness Business School, I was knocking into so many HR departments, and I would bring all these studies to just convince them that it was the right thing to do, and it was also profitable. That happiness would increase productivity and commitment, and creativity and innovation, and people will just be more solution focused, and so forth. And I was looking last week, there was a large meta analysis. You probably know this better than I do. That combined like around 340, I think it was 339 studies, just really just really found a consistent correlation in between well-being and performance. So I think studies have much well proven that it's not only the right thing to do, but it's also a really good business strategy. And I think the opposite is true as well. Studies also have revealed that the higher your stress levels, that will have a very direct consequence and just really damage your performance. And I think this makes intuitive sense, right? If you're happy, you're more energetic, you're more action oriented, you're more solution oriented too, you are more creative, and you just really want to go and go and in fact, right? And when you're depressed and you're unmotivated, you just don't want to do anything. That's absolutely common sense, I would say. And also, when you like someone in your team, whether it is a peer, a leader, or you're very much committed to the mission of your company, you will go the extra mile to do it. If you don't like them, why would you just go and do the extra mile for them? Like, doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And then and I think that's the issue with common sense, isn't it? Is to you, that is common sense.
Yeah.
And that is intuitive,
True.
but to many people it isn't, and that's why that meta study was really powerful. I think Jan Emmanuel Deneve, who was on a few podcasts before, if people scroll down, he's talking about the work they did with Indeed, where they were trying to move from correlation to causation, which
Yeah,
they've done before in other studies, but on that scale. And that's what we're trying to do at the Happiness Index right now, is collect more and more data on it. So
I love that.
it moves from where people like me and you believe in it to people that you can actually see it in the spreadsheet. And that's, for anyone who wants to get involved without having to spend any money or anything on this, if they go to the happinessindex.com, they can actually fill out the survey and be part of the report. So
Yeah.
if you want to geek out more with Madalena and me, go and be part of that
Yeah.
study.
And I love that because we don't use research, so we need more research, out there. And it's funny because the people that I would have to prove that it was good for them. Now I think the market speaks for itself, especially with the new generations. They're demanding more from their companies and from the market itself. So companies are just really seeing their retention rates going higher and higher, turnover and so forth. So their stats already speak for themselves. So now we don't need to convince them, I think, anymore.
But I do think some companies are going the other way, and I think it's driven by politics. It's driven by global trends. I'm a believer in the importance of treating people well anyway, but I believe without the data, then you might lose people, because obviously in business comes down to short-term versus long-term decisions sometimes, and people make short-term decisions that they think are great, but actually are really like grabbing away at the core and the culture of an organization.
Yeah, 100%. And belief without data, just wishful thinking, right? So to get those analytical brains on board, we just really need to show the data. And I think that's great.
Yeah.
What I thought at some point is that I've been here just convincing people that, this is good for them. But at the same time, people are so miserable, like this is the right thing to do. At some point I was within this um, wavelength mind frame. But yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, and that was actually the next question around belief and data and science, which is the actual content that's in your program, Madalena. Where does your personal belief on happier people and the data and the science meet in the actual program design? I'd love to know how you build those programs.
Yeah. Our approach is very much built on science and empirical data, of course, but very much anchored in the human belief that people should have, they deserve dignity, they deserve support, um, and just they just really deserve flourishing. So the way we build the programs is, one, you can't just change an organization if you don't change yourself. So that starts with self-awareness. And then we bring the latest research of what is the market telling us, global workplace reports and so forth, but also, years of and decades of research in the well-being space, in the happiness space, in the leadership space. So we uncover all of that, right? And then we start applying that to, the operations itself. So we have the theory, we have the human side to it, to leadership, but then we have a framework, as I was explaining before, a roadmap that is like, call it like a SWOT analysis, right? Where we understand and just really map out all the employee experience and all the operations from A to Z, and later start building a departmental, happiness plan. Because what we have seen is that a lot of times you have an organizational strategy in place, but with global teams, with the distance and so forth. So in an ideal world, every single leader will build theirs as well, and it's the only way you can just really disseminate that culture and just really maintain a sustainable strategy. So in an ideal world, every single leader should have these teachings and learnings, but yeah, it's very much based on both.
Yeah, and it's so powerful to hear that both are important, because data, like we're looking into all the data on this. It is really important, but without the belief, um, because there's loads of data out there, isn't there, on stuff that's really good for
Yeah.
you, but people without the belief don't go down that route, because sometimes
Yes.
they believe in the opposite or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
And then you have, okay, what does the science tell me, But then how can I actually implement this within my team? So clear strategies, quick wins that they can put in place. So very much aligned.
so this is more on the entrepreneurial question, because it's been a big undertaking. 7 years is what I calculated. Is 7 years correct that you've been running it, Madalena? Did I get that?
Yeah, we registered 2018, but we started fully more in 2019. So it's been, that first year was much more awareness, but yeah, 7 years.
So I'm asking you as an entrepreneur, really, rather than technical on this one. What's your biggest learning in the 7 years of running the school? Because must have been a lot from it, from crafting it to growing it, everything.
Yes, because there was nothing in the space that was, very well structured, and I didn't know what companies would buy and what would make sense. I was discovering along the way, right? So for me personally, as an entrepreneur, the biggest lesson is really one about resilience and perseverance. So what do I mean by this? Is that understanding that the real reward lies in the journey. What do I mean by this? A lot of entrepreneurs, and I've seen, they give them 6 months to trial a new business until they're make or break, you know? And it took a few years, especially when you're creating a new category in a conservative space, there was Portugal at the time. When you're creating something new, that, market awareness and that visible traction often takes years and takes a lot of time, So it's easy to just really fixate yourself on a future outcome, right? And just always chasing something to come. And at some point, I understood that I was just, chasing the golden pot at the rainbow that doesn't exist, right? And that would uh, keep my mindset just really always forever looking ahead. So I had to learn how to reverse engineer, and that again, positive psychology, recenter myself, just really enjoying the journey. So I thought to myself, I need to fall in love with the building, not just with the outcome. And I think that also helped me, in managing my team. So as for entrepreneurship, that would be my major lesson.
Yeah, I think you learnt that definitely way quicker than I did. Our fir-
Think it's
our
been
fir-
so long.
Yeah, but our first business was 10 years and we built it, grew it, sold it. It was, on paper, it was a successful exit. However, I didn't learn that until I started the happiness index because it was all about like the end goal and all this kind of stuff. And it's like the classic, you get to the end goal and you feel completely empty.
Yeah.
But so I had to learn it through, it just took me longer. Let's just,
Yeah, and it was hard, I didn't take a salary for 2 years, and people wouldn't believe. For two
people don't
years,
realize
I had
that.
no, they don't. They don't realize the investment. And I was working at some point in very different time zones, to just manage it all. At some point, I was having a full-time job while doing the side hustle, and then I eventually, did this full time. But it takes a lot of resilience and perseverance. But I think when you have a strong belief, you'll find a strong why. So I think that's, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they give a very short time frame to make it work.
Yeah,
And especially when you're creating something new, the market needs time.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Madalena, last question. I feel like I've got so much great information here, and then I'll try and summarize your notes. But I normally say to people, if you go back in a time machine and had to give your 8-year-old some advice, 8-year-old self some advice, but I'm going to change it because we've both talked about being a parent today. And there's a saying, isn't there? You're as happy as your unhappiest child is a saying that is something that that definitely know to be true of myself. Um, so I'm going to put you in the time machine, and you're going to go back and you're going to meet your mum. So you're going to go back to when you were 8, but your mum's there. But you're obviously a parent yourself now. What would you say to your mum? Because she's obviously thinking about
I would say poor mom.
you.
Um, I would say I have to get emotional because I was the middle child. I gave her so much trouble. I would say that I am very much based on data, but also faith. And I would tell her, just keep your faith that everything will turn right on the other side. That, even through the struggle, your teachings will remain with me, the daughter. And if I have any sort of, a broader way of looking at life, it was definitely because she just kept finding new ways to help me. And yeah, she really expanded my horizon. So I would just say, you're doing your best. Keep your faith that everything will turn turn out well.
What a lovely message. So I'm going to summarize quickly some of the key points. There was so many. Maybe AI will be able to summarize it better than me. but don't neglect the causes of how you're feeling. Optimism is not la la land. Take away what doesn't serve us. I'm going to say that twice because it's so powerful. Take away what doesn't serve us. We do a simple stop, start, continue at work.
Yeah.
We started it with
That's it.
we started it with tasks, but actually it's really good for stuff like this as well. Accept fully all my emotions. That's more a sort of a statement in speech marks from you. Go and read The Conquest of Happiness and um, keep your faith. I think it's the perfect place to
Yeah.
end, Madalena. And I'll just say on behalf of the listeners and myself, you just went straight deep into these questions, many which we didn't have written down before.
Thank you.
It's really
But
great.
I'm not a native English speaker, so excuse my English. I've been out of Australia for a few years, and I was telling my husband, my English is not as good as used to be. So forgive me for that. But it was a great. I had a great time. Thank you.
I don't think there's anyone listening in English. I think we could cope.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you, Madalena.
Thank you.